أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. سبح اسم ربك الأعلى الذي خلق فسوى والذي قدر فهدى والذي أخرج المرعى فجعله غثاء أحوى سنقرئك فلا تنسى إلا ما شاء الله إنه يعلم الجهر وما يخفى ونيسرك لليسرى فذكر إن نفعت الذكرى سيذكر من يخشى ويتجنبها الأشقى التي يصلى النار الكبرى ثم لا يموت فيها ولا يحيا قد أفلح من تزكى وذكر اسم ربه فصلى بل تؤثرون الحياة الدنيا والآخرة خير وأبقى إن هذا لفي الصحف الأولى صحف إبراهيم وموسى. صلوات على محمد وآل محمد.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين وأفضل الصلوات وأتم التسليم على سيدنا ونبينا وحبيب قلوبنا وطبيب نفوسنا وشفيع ذنوبنا أبي القاسم محمد وعلى آل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين الذين أذهب الله عنهم الرجس وطهرهم تطهيرا. Condolences to everyone on what we just commemorated 2 days ago, the Arba'een of Imam Hussein alayhi salam, and another very important event that unfortunately usually passes and we don't very much take notice of is the passing away anniversary of the mother of Imam Ali, Sayyida Fatima bint Asad alayha salam. And I thought this would be a wonderful opportunity to speak about something that I think is extremely important in today's society, and that is who we need to take as role models and examples in our lives. We have spoken about role models before. We've covered this topic on numerous occasions on our Friday night youth program, and those who are regulars are very much familiar with how important it is for us to be very, very selective in who we look up to, especially in today's society where there are so many different trends, so many different ideas, and also a lot of challenging elements that probably did not exist in previous times, especially with social media and the influences in social media, and how much, unfortunately, many people in our society look up to these social media influences. And also with us as Muslims living in Western society, the challenge is even greater because we are living as a minority, and the stronger tendency that is around us is pretty much against our overall value system that we have as Muslims. What you can regularly see, for example, in the culture of Western society could be 180 degrees opposite and different to what we believe in as Muslims. And I gave this example a few weeks ago when I said in Western society, in Australian society, the happiest thing that a person can do, the most, delightful thing that a person can do, the most encouraging thing that a person can do that will really give them self-esteem and self-value and self-appreciation is dancing. Whereas in Islam, it is exactly the opposite. That dancing is, in public, for example, is forbidden. It is haram, and alaykum salam, and everything else. This is one of many examples that we can very simply give. In the case of women, and us knowing that there is a strong influence of feminism, where in the feminist mentality that exists in today's society, it's all about liberating women, it's all about giving support and value to women, but at the cost of losing a lot of integrity and a lot of moral, spiritual, and religious values of a female. So much so that, as you all know, in today's society, women are used as a commodity to boost sales. Women are used as an advertisement tool to gain money and profit. That women are used in the most degenerate ways for, of course, the sake of personal gains. That women are used to fulfill one's lusts and desires. That women are encouraged and pushed not to focus on family and having children and being the backbone of society, but rather to delay marriage and delay having children and focus more on a career and live a career-driven life. Of course, we all know that Islam in no way discourages women from having a job or from pursuing a career. It's rather the opposite, as I will show very soon what it is that our religion had said 1,400 plus years ago. And that's why we do not need feminism. Feminism did not do anything for us as Muslims because we already have that integrated within our religious value system that we have. And that's where the challenge is for us as Muslims. How are we able to adopt an Islamic lifestyle, and how are we able to stay strong as far as our Islamic values? That we in any way stay motivated in wanting to keep to our values and not become chameleons and always wanting to change for the sake of wanting to fit in or for the sake of wanting to please society or those who are around us. And yes, it really is difficult for Muslim women in this society because for men, there aren't that many restraints and demands and requirements. They need to observe, but when it comes to women, not only are there many restraints and requirements, but there are also, women are also the easy targets of Islamophobes, because women wear the symbol of Islam whenever they leave their house. Men don't. I would have no idea whatsoever if I see one of you guys walking down the street, whether you are a Muslim or a Middle Eastern, Coptic, Maronite, Christian, Assyrian, we don't know. But when it comes to a woman covering herself with hijab, by default, she is a walking representation of Islam. And that means that she carries a very, very big responsibility. That also means that we need to try to empower Muslim women in such a way where we don't make it harder than what it already is as far as her hijab and Muslim identity is concerned. But that also means that we all have responsibilities. Unfortunately, in many families, we can see that parents are sometimes stricter on the girls than they are on the boys, where boys have more flexibility when it comes to something like going out or staying out and things like that. As if the girl will be more prone to some kind of misguidance more than a male, which is unfortunately definitely not the case and a part of culture and not religion. And this is where we need to always remember that there is a difference between religion and culture. Me, for example, simple example, and I know many like me, would be stricter on my boys than I am on my girls. Because with the male, he is probably going to have a larger circle of friends that could influence him in the bad, wrong, negative way. And usually the male, the boy is, alaykum salam, Zaid. Usually the male is more into going out and staying out of the house. But with the female, she's usually more comfortable being at home or wanting to return to the comfort and safety of her home. And that's why, even though we say that the Muslim woman has a big responsibility in her representing her religion every time she leaves the house, that doesn't mean that the male has a free card to do as he wishes, to have no restrictions whatsoever in what it is that he is doing. Alhamdulillah, we are Muslim, and we all need to remember that we stay up to the standards of what it is that Islam wants from us. Feminism wants to promote the freedom of women and equality for women, which means that a woman is able to freely choose her work, her life, her future, and what she wears. To prove the hypocrisy, to simply prove the hypocrisy of feminism and feminist activists, where is their voice when it comes to the banning of hijab and abayas, as is recently in European countries? If you really claim that you, a feminist, promote freedom and equality, then why does it only work this way, but it doesn't work that way? Why does it only work with removing clothes, but doesn't work with adding clothes? Simple question, it has no answer. And that's why feminism is really all about pushing a liberal agenda. And liberalism basically means that you don't believe in anything sacred or coming from God or given to you as a command from religion. And that's why we all have to be very, very careful with the poison of feminism. And the reason why I say that we don't need feminism as Muslims, we don't need feminism at all, is because from the very beginning of Islam, and even before Islam, we have elevated the status of women in a lot of cases to be superior to that of the man, but in a realistic, natural way, not by using shallow, empty, meaningless slogans. They say that women can have equal rights in all types of work. Even in the army, a woman is able to bear arms and be a soldier in the army. Look it up yourself as far as the cases of harassment and rape that happened in the American, British, Australian, all these different army places. And how it goes against the very nature of a woman or a man to be bunking together for long periods of times, not taking into consideration the moral damage that is going to happen as a result of that. When you look all the way back to the beginning of Islam, you can see how many female role models we have and how none of them were marginalized or put to the side, and how it was never the case of there being patriarchy or any of these kind of words that are thrown around so often these days. Islam does not believe in equal rights. Islam believes in rights portioned to people based on their status and place in a society. Your rights as a child is different to the rights of your parent. It is different to the rights of your neighbor. It is most definitely going to be different to the rights of the opposite gender. وَلَيْسَ الذَّكَرُ كَالْأُنْثَى. A female is different than a male, and therefore it is far from just and fair that because there being certain differences in the female and the male that they are to be treated absolutely equally, that the laws are to be directed at them absolutely equally. And here we're not talking about who stops at the traffic light, or who can get a driver's license, or who has an entitlement to, for example, do this or that, these kind of conventional laws. No, we're talking about religious commands and laws. That, مثلا, a female during her pregnancy and after the delivering of a child, a male doesn't experience that. So how can it be that a female has to do exactly the same? That's what equal rights means, doesn't it? Has to do exactly the same as that of a male. And what the female goes through on a monthly basis, that she has to be doing exactly the same as that of a male. Or in the case of her physiology and what she has, we can't compare a lot of what we believe in with today's society as well, because in today's society, men, unfortunately, some men are becoming very femininized, and some women are becoming very masculinized. You've got men who hif their hawajib, who do their eyebrows. You've got men who focus on their hair more than women, and they have to go to the hairdresser and do their, what's that called? That new hairstyle? The fade, yeah, the fade. No, there's something else. No, it wasn't a fade. What was it? Huh? Burst? Yeah, the burst. And all these other, what's going on? And then you've got men also doing this as well, because they've got long hair and they want to, and all these other things. Or wearing that thing, turong, what's it called? Turong? Durong? Durag. Wearing durag. Like, what's wrong with these men in today's society? Yes, you have to be presentable. You remember when we spoke about this, about being presentable, about taking care of yourself, about being elegant. A woman came to Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alihi, to the Holy Prophet, and she complained to him about how mu'affin and dirty and negligent her husband is. And Rasulullah, the Holy Prophet, he censured him and said to him, that's very shameful for what you're doing. The same way you want your wife to be nice looking and presentable, she also wants the same with you. Coming home with garlic breath, with not having put deodorant for 6 weeks, wearing the same clothes, scruffy beards, stained this, and why? Anytime, remember when we spoke about this, that the Holy Prophet used to use any time, even when he was next to some water, and the reflection of the water, for him to brush his hair and take care of himself, and the siwak and the perfume and all these things. Right? The issue here is that there is a difference, that males have certain responsibilities and females have certain responsibilities. We should not lose our direction by being confused about the trends that are in society today. And by the way, I'm not only talking about Muslims, I'm talking about Christians and Jews and other religions as well. That we still have Christian groups and Jewish groups who still are as conservative probably as Muslims, who still hold up to their biblical values as well. So we're not here talking about other religions and saying that it's only Muslims and Islam. No. What we need to be careful about is liberal modern thoughts and ideology and the agenda that is being pushed in that regard. And that we have many prime examples of wonderful women in early Islam that would be more than enough to motivate us to pursue a religious Islamic lifestyle. We have women who are narrators of hadith. We have women who were and are scholars. We have women who took a primary role in society, like a Sayyida al-Zahra, a Sayyida Zainab, peace be upon them. We have women who became the basis of Islam. The Holy Prophet said Islam survived as a result of two things: the wealth of Khadija and the sword of Imam Ali of Dhul Fiqar. Is that enough? Is that not enough of a motivation for you to say that Alhamdulillah, my religion has given the highest level of honor to women, that women are never going to be used as an instrument to fulfill the lust of men and make them a commercial advertising commodity. Alhamdulillah. We say that with pride. And it's really bad, the situation of how some of our Muslim brothers and sisters are with their inferiority complexity, with their uqda that they have, that they think that, I'm deprived of this hijab is restricting me in doing certain things and wanting to pursue certain things. We have to always remember, bless you, we have to always remember that we need to charge and recharge our spiritual battery to make sure that we're not distracted. You know how many times, some unfortunately sisters take things the wrong way and say that, why is it that women have less inheritance than men? That's not the case. Why are you falling into the trap of Islamophobes who are spreading these kind of poisonous ideas and not trying to be inspired by the teachings of your religion? Why are you so easily influenced by your surroundings? Why do you allow yourself to be distracted? Let's have a little bit of a read into the biography of Sayyida Fatima bint Asad. As I said, the 23rd of Safar in the year 4 after Hijrah was the day of the time of her passing away. Her grandfather and the Prophet's great-grandfather were the same person, Hashim. So Fatima bint Asad, and of course goes back to who's the Prophet's grandfather? What was his name? Abdul Muttalib, the son of Hashim. And Fatima bint Asad, the same thing. That's number one, as far as her relation with the holy prophets. Number two, Fatima bint Asad is the mother of 12 of the lineage of the Ma'sumin alayhim as-salam. The same as Sayyida Khadija bint Khuwaylid. She was also the mother of the 12 Ma'sumin from Fatima to Zahra, and her offspring, Fatima bint Asad from Imam Ali and his offspring. Number two, her husband, Abu Talib alayhi salam, was one of the believers. She was also one of the believers as well. They followed the Hanif religion, which was the religion established by Prophet Ibrahim alayhi salam. They, being from the lineage of Prophet Ibrahim and Ismail, they carried on with the legacy of being monotheistic believers. Although Islam had not yet come, but they were not like the polytheists, the mushrikeen of Quraysh, that they believed in a one God, that they believed in the message of religion, and that they followed al-Din al-Hanif. And to support this, we can see that when in the books of history, when Abu Talib proposed to Sayyida Fatima bint Asad, he recited a khutbah in the nikah day that he had, and he said the following: Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen, Rabbil Arsh Al-Azim, Wal Maqam Al-Kareem, Wal Mash'ar Al-Hatim. And then he said, Alladhi istafana a'laman wa sadatan wa urafa'an wa khullasan wa qadatan. Yani Abu Talib is basically saying that God has selected us, has chosen us, etc., with the rest of the khutbah. Of course, when we do mention Abu Talib, it's very important for us to present this question to some of our Sunni brothers and sisters and ask, why do you insist so much that Abu Talib died a kafir? Why is it so difficult for you to believe that Abu Talib accepted Islam? Why is it that the likes of Abu Sufyan and all these other low lives who had nothing other than hatred and hostility to Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alihi so easily accepted Islam, well, which they didn't, by the way. They were forced to accept Islam after the conquering of Mecca. But when it comes to Abu Talib, who did nothing other than support the Holy Prophets, that you insist that he died a kafir. And that is, of course, the way we could understand it. That's the only criticism that they can have against Imam Ali. Yes, there's no blemish, there's no criticism. No one can criticize Imam Ali. The Sunnis don't have any criticism towards Imam Ali, right? So they go to his father, And they say Imam Ali he's a good person, but his father died a kafir. As-Sayyidah Fatima bint Asad was among the early Muslims. She was, to be precise, she was the 11th person to accept Islam. She became Muslim in the first year of Bi'thah, which means 13 years before Hijrah. In the first year of Bi'thah, she became a Muslim. And in the first year of the advent of Islam, she became a Muslim. She was the 11th person to become a Muslim. She was the first woman to pledge allegiance and do bay'ah to the Holy Prophet. Now, by the way, when we say bay'ah and pledging of allegiance, that is another word of what we refer to in today's society as voting, right? In the olden days, there wasn't, that word voting didn't exist. It was all about allegiance and pledging of allegiance and bay'ah. If you pledged allegiance, that means you're voting and you're supporting this ruler or this person. She was, and there's a verse in the Holy Quran that speaks about the bay'ah of the women to the Holy Prophet. And she was the first woman to pledge allegiance to Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wasallam. She was also the first woman to migrate from Mecca to Medina. You know how they had to migrate after the long persecution, and in those 3 years of being in exile, where when Sayyidah Khadija and Abu Talib passed away, and what did the Holy Prophet name that year when both of them passed away? Amul Huzn, the year of grief. Why would the Prophet call it the year of grief? And him grieving over Abu Talib passing away if he wasn't a Muslim. If he wasn't a Muslim, and Fatima bint Asad was a Muslim, was it not the duty of the Prophet to say to her, your husband's no longer a Muslim, you have to leave him? Was it not her duty to say, oh, by the way, my husband's a kafir, I can't stay with him anymore because he's no longer a Muslim? That didn't happen. There's not one incident in history or hadith that says that the Prophet said to Fatima bint Asad, and he respected her like his own mother. Because when Abdul Muttalib, because the Prophet was living with Abdul Muttalib, because Abdullah, his father, passed away at a young age, and until the age of 8, the Prophet was living with Abdul Muttalib, and then from the age of 8 until his marriage, he was living, which is around about 17 years, he was living with Abu Talib. And as the hadith says, Fatima bint Asad treated him better than she treated her own children. Because she, of course, had other sons like Talib and Aqil. Aqil, who's the son of Aqil? Muslim ibn Aqil. And Ja'far al-Tayyar, as you all know. And, of course, Imam Ali, who was the youngest. And she treated the Prophet better than she treated her own children, knowing that there's something exceptional in who this man is and who he is going to be. And this is why the Holy Prophet, when she passed away, he said to Imam Ali Imam Ali was very upset at the time, but he said to Imam Ali that as she was your mother, she was also my mother as well. And so, why is it that if he really loved her that much, he didn't, inform her of what her Shari'i religious duty was all that time? This is, again, some of the arguments that we can put towards that. Another very unique merits of Sayyida Fatima bint Asad, and of course you need to remember that before Islam, women were in the Arabian Peninsula were treated in a very, very bad way. That as the Quran says, that whenever a woman bears a female child, the parent, the father becomes frowns and gets very, very angry. You all know وَإِذَا الْمَوْءُودَةُ وَأْدُ الْبَنَاتِ, as they say, وَإِذَا الْمَوْءُودَةُ سُئِلَتْ بِأَيِّ ذَنْبٍ قُتِلَتْ, that when a daughter would be born, out of shame that they had in that time, they would bury her alive. And then now all of a sudden Islam is coming and saying all of these things. And you want to change your values, Muslim women, Muslim men. You want to change your values and you want to accommodate to Western liberal society. Let's have a look, a simple look of the history of women rights right here in Australia. And all of this is copy-paste from the internet, and all of these are from like official sites, not like random places. Women have historically been excluded from large parts of public and political life in Australian history. For example, women were not elected to the Commonwealth Parliament until 1943. How many hundreds of years ago was that? Wasn't hundreds of years ago. The 1962 Commonwealth Electoral Act provided all Indigenous Australians with the right to enrol. Yani until before the 1962 Commonwealth Electoral Act, Indigenous people were not allowed to vote. It wasn't until 1965 that Australian women won the right to drink in a public bar. I said that's not relevant to us, right? Alhamdulillah, we stay away from these kind of things that remove our sanity. But for liberal people, I'm not even going to say for Christians and Jews, because even for Christians and Jews that's haram. For liberal people it's a big thing, but women weren't allowed to enter into pubs and bars and things like that until 1965. The marriage bar, the marriage law, meant that women working in education were not permitted to teach after they got married. And then, of course, after extensive lobbying by the Temporary Teachers Club, this was lifted in 1965. Read about this. Read about women not being allowed to go to universities and not being allowed to be educated. And then you read what Islam says. Talabul ilm, seeking of knowledge, faridatun, is a mandatory, obligatory act. Ala kulli muslimin wa muslimatin. Just in case someone thinks that Muslim is only relevant to men. No. Muslim male and female, the Prophet says. The 1967 constitutional referendum recognized, we read about that, Indigenous Australians as citizens, right? In the 19th century, Australian women had very few legal rights. Once married, their rights were further limited and they were all transferred to the husband. Because in Western society, when a woman gets married, she becomes the property of the male. And you all know that there's also the culture of dowry. Dowry means what a woman needs to pay to the man for him to marry her. Husbands were the sole legal guardian of any children from a marriage and could remove them from a mother's care at any time, even bequeathing their care to other people in their will. Yani the mother's still alive, the father can say, well, I'm not giving you any custody to the child, and I'm going to give the child to someone else and not even to you. Before 1870, women were not allowed and able to file for a divorce. In the Quran, we have a whole surah called Suratul Talaq. This is where we start to not only appreciate our religion, but also say, yeah, that's right. We don't need all this feminism rubbish. We don't need none of that, because it's all integrated in our religion. We just have to make sure that it's used the proper way. Are there men who misuse rights? Yeah, there are men who are zalimeen, who are oppressive, who are tyrants, who are evil, who use religion to suit their needs. Unfortunately, that's the case. But Islam condemns them more than anything else, more than anyone else. In 1913, the Law Society refused to allow some women to sit the Law Society examination. From the early 1990s, not so long ago, there was growing criticism in the community about courts being entirely male. And many, many other examples that we are able to give. So when we talk about women role models in our religion, and how proud we are that we have many examples of female role models that we can use, not only women, that men can use as well. Examples for both genders. Another very important merit for Sayyidah Fatima alayhi salam is her being the only person to deliver a child inside the Holy Kaaba. And as you all know, the Kaaba was something sacred for people even before Islam. Again, those who have sick hearts said, there's no merit in Imam Ali being born inside the Kaaba. The Kaaba was full of idols anyway. Wasn't a good place for him to be born. There's no merit in that. If that was the case, then why is it that in Sahih Muslim there is a insistence on someone by the name of Hakim ibn Hizam ibn Khuwaylid being born in the Kaaba? If there's no merits, then why do you insist in saying, yeah, there's one person, he was born in the Kaaba and mashallah alayh and this and that? Why? Of course, as we know, one of the things that the Amawiyun and the Marwaniyun and the Zubayriyun, these, rulers during the Umayyad period, they were pushing an agenda to whatever merit and fadl and virtue that anyone from Ahlul Bayt had, they would bring the same from their side. And this guy by the name of Hakim ibn Hizam, he is related to Zubayr ibn al-Awwam ibn Khuwaylid. Obviously, that's what's going to be the reason. Interesting is, if you look this person up, he accepted Islam. He accepted in Islam in the year 6 after Hijrah, which means how long after the beginning of Islam? How many years after the beginning of Islam? 6 plus 13 equals 21? 32? Very bad maths, people. 19. يعني 19 طول 19 years until he accepted Islam. Where's the merit and virtue in that? And that's why, again, something very, very fishy going on here. السيدة Fatima bint Asad was the first to bear a child who was a Hashimi. That is something else. Fatima bint Asad was also someone who narrated a hadith as well. Because of her closeness to the Holy Prophet and because of her involvement from the very beginning of Islam, she was a primary supporter and a primary witness to all of these things that were happening, and therefore she narrated hadith. As I mentioned, she was the first woman to migrate from Mecca to Medina, and that's a long walk, by the way. Between Mecca and Medina, it's 400 kilometers, and she did so walking. One of the things that we can learn from, of course, along with everything else that we have picked up on, is that she persevered, and she was a mujahidah, and she struggled, all for the sake of upholding her values and her religion. And that's what we need to do. In all the difficulties that we face, in all the challenges that we have, sometimes we could also be very, very lonely because our surroundings are going a different direction. But we always need to make sure that we have the strongest motivation and that we don't get too occupied with all these different things happening around us. That we remember that Islam came gharib, it came foreign, and for a lot of cases, for a lot of people, it will stay foreign. That in this murky society that we live in, we need to remember that we stick to our values and what it is that we believe in. And that's why, because of her jihad and because of her perseverance, when al-Hajj Salah, and because of her perseverance, حج تقدر تقرأ الزيارة دزيت لك إياه إن شاء الله السلام عليكم. And because of her perseverance and her jihad, she is one of 2 or 3 women who have been mentioned. Of course, she was buried in Jannatul Baqi', by the way. She was buried in Baqi' next to the masjid of the Holy Prophet. And because of who she was and what she represented, there is a special ziyarah to be recited for her in her honor. The only other person is a Sayyidah Fatima Zahra, and the third is a Sayyidah Narjis alayhimus salam as well. And that also shows her status, her great status, and how we need to use them as examples and role models in our lives, in our marriage, in how we need to be as spouses, as mothers, as people, as Muslim women, as Muslim men, contributing to society in a very, very good, positive way, and being proud of our culture, our heritage, our values. We will finish off the program with reciting the ziyarah of Sayyidah Fatima. وآخر دعوانا أن الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا محمد وآله الطاهرين.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. أزور لي ولوالدي ولإخواني وأصدقائي وجيراني ومن قلدني الدعاء والزيارة السيدة فاطمة بنت أسد أم أمير المؤمنين عليه السلام، طاعة قربة إلى الله تعالى. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. السلام على نبي الله، السلام على رسول الله، السلام على محمد سيد المرسلين، السلام على سيد الأولين، السلام على سيد الآخرين، السلام على من بعثه الله، السلام على من بعثه الله رحمة للعالمين. السلام عليك أيها النبي ورحمة الله وبركاته. السلام على فاطمة بنت أسد الهاشمية. السلام عليك أيتها الصديقة المرضية. السلام عليك أيتها التقية النقية. السلام عليك أيتها الكريمة الرضية. السلام عليك يا كافلة محمد خاتم النبيين. السلام عليك يا من السلام عليك يا من ظهرت شفقتها على رسول الله خاتم النبيين. السلام عليك يا من تربيتها لولي الله الأمين. السلام عليك وعلى روحك وبدنك الطاهر. السلام عليك وعلى ولدك ورحمة الله وبركاته. أشهد أنك أحسنت الكفالة وأديت الأمانة واجتهدت في مرضاة الله وبالغت في حفظ رسول الله، عارفة بنبوته، مستبصرة بنعمته، كافلة بتربيته، مشفقة على نفسه، واقفة على خدمته، مختارة رضاه، مؤثرة رضاه. وأشهد أنك مضيت على الإيمان والتمسك بأشرف الأديان، راضية مرضية، طاهرة زكية، تقية نقية. فرضي الله عنك وأرضاك وجعل الجنة منزلك ومأواك. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد، وانفعني بزيارتها وثبتني على محبتها، ولا تحرمني شفاعتها وشفاعة الأئمة من ذريتها، وارزقني مرافقتها واحشرني معها ومع أولادها الطاهرين. اللهم لا تجعله آخر العهد من زيارتي إياها، وارزقني العودة إليها أبدا ما أبقيتني، وإذا توفيتني فاحشرني في زمرتها وأدخلني في شفاعتها برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين. اللهم بحقها عندك ومنزلتها لديك اغفر لي ولوالدي ولجميع المؤمنين والمؤمنات وآتنا في الدنيا حسنة وفي الآخرة حسنة وقنا برحمتك عذاب النار. وصلى الله على محمد وآله الأطهار. زيارة قصيرة الإمام الحسين عليه السلام. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. السلام عليك يا أبا عبد الله. السلام عليك ورحمة الله وبركاته. لعن الله من قتلك، ولعن الله من شرك في دمك، ولعن الله من بلغه ذلك فرضي به. أنا إلى الله من ذلك بريء، أنا إلى الله من ذلك بريء. زيارة صاحب الزمان عجل الله تعالى. السلام عليك يا مولانا يا صاحب الزمان. السلام عليك يا شريك القرآن. السلام عليك يا قاطع البرهان. السلام عليك يا إمام الإنس والجان. عجل الله تعالى فرجك وسهل مخرجك، وجعلنا من أنصارك وأعوانك ومن المستشهدين بين يديك وتحت لوائك، ورحمة الله وبركاته إلى أرواح المؤمنين والمؤمنات ومن مات على الإيمان، وإلى أرواح أموات الحاضرين جميعا. رحم الله من قرأ الفاتحة مع الإخلاص والصلوات.